Yes. All right. So welcome everyone. As I said, my name is Maya, and together with Merzat and the help of Fabian and Amy, we organized this small event on behalf of Correlate the Netherlands. And Correlate is a nonprofit organization that is building a network of data scientists to help organizations that do social good. So basically a data for good community. And there's around 250 people in the Dutch community, over 1,000 abroad. And as part of this, we also try to host semi-regular events on data science for good. And today we'll talk about nature. The next event is in 2 weeks on tax justice and tax havens and agroforestry monitoring, if you're interested in that. But for now, we'll talk about nature. So yeah, today we have 3 speakers that will tell us something about their work on nature conservation and data science. We have Tim van Deursen first. He's the co-founder of Poacher, who will tell us about, I think, smart camera traps and cell phone data. Then we're supposed to have Roeke van Grieken, but he's not here. Instead, we have Jan-Kees Schakel, who is the founder of Sensing Clues, and they work with all sorts of data intelligence to also look at human-wildlife conflicts. And last but not least, we have Timo Roeke from Observation International or Waarneming.nl that do a lot of collection of observations of animal and plant species by users, citizens, basically. Some household announcements. You were muted when you got in. Please stay muted. If you have a question, you can either raise your hand or drop it in the chat or mention in the chat that you have a question, and then we will get to you. We will have the presentation first, then some short questions, like 1 or 2, 3 clarifying questions that are short. And then all the way at the end, we have some room for a bit more discussion and a larger Q&A. I think that's it from my side. So yeah, I would open the floor for Tim.
Yeah, all right, so here, let me share my screen. There it is. I hope you can all see it. Yeah?
Yes, can see it.
All right, very good. So, hi, my name is Tim, and like Maya just mentioned, we're going to be talking a little bit about conservation and the technology that we are developing. So, if we talk about nature conservation, obviously we are also talking about poaching, which is a big problem. You probably are aware with poaching. You probably heard it in the news, and most of the times, this poaching is about people entering national parks and they kill rhinos, elephants, etc. These kinds of photos are being taken regularly, and these are actually the people that we're talking about going into the national parks with rifles and killing precious animals. And obviously this needs to stop. But before we dive further into this, a little background about me and my friend and colleague Thijs, who's probably also in the chat, in the attendees, so to say. So we work at Q42, which is a technical agency. We are in The Hague in Amsterdam, and we have around 80 software engineers that build all sorts of things like websites, applications, stuff that you use on your phone for big clients. So Q42 is a commercial agency. And within Q42, my colleague Thijs and I have the opportunity to work on projects together with NGOs like World Wildlife Foundation, but others as well, to look into the possibility of helping out with technical innovations and solving potential global challenges like conservation. The first project that we did was in 2016. That is where this all started. It was with a project with Greenpeace, and that basically kick-started all the activities that we are still doing. But in 2018, we learned about the challenges basically with conservation and poaching in general. So the things that I'm about to tell are focused on poaching and in addition a human-elephant conflict as well. So that's interesting. So this project, so like I said, we do all sorts of projects together with NGOs and other things. So if you are interested in those, there are lots of these projects on our website. We even created a virtual reality documentary. So it's like it's all over the place of what we do. So for now, we focus on the conservation project that we do, because we only have 10 minutes, which is really short to cover all of this, but I'll give it a try. So 2018 we started. You see my happy face over there. That was in the Kafue National Park in Zambia, where we deployed our first prototype. And basically what we did there is we were looking into the possibility to detect poachers using their cell phones, right? So you all have one of these or something similar, poachers as well, right? So they go into these large areas. They shoot the animal multiple often, and then when they have to get out of the area, they need to call their buddies to help them, right? I mean, these tusks of these elephants and these rhino tusks are heavy. The operation is difficult, so they need help. So they use their phones for many different purposes. So the theory that we had is, let's try to detect these phones. So this is something that we are still doing. And we have already developed a prototype, and we are now working on finalizing the actual version that we're going to roll out in the next couple of months. And as you can see, we started in 2018, and we have now several national parks that want to have the GSM sensor, as well as the camera trap. So let me get back to the camera trap in just a second. So 2018, we figured, okay, so GSM detection. So we went to Zambia and we worked together with different parties that are doing conservation, like Pantera, but also Game Rangers International. And what we learned also while we were there is how camera traps work, right? So you've probably you've seen the picture of the poachers that I had in my presentation a couple of slides earlier. These camera traps are being used to record animals, obviously, but also detect if something is happening in the area that's that shouldn't happen. Like, for instance, people entering the area. But the problem with current camera traps out there is that they are not very well connected, right? These areas are very remote, so it's very difficult often to get mobile phone coverage. So what we developed is a concept where automatic image classification is happening based on the photos of the camera trap. So we figured, what if we created a box which has some hardware in it that can connect to existing camera traps, get the photo and tries to analyze it with machine learning algorithms. And then if it sees, for instance, an elephant or a rhino, it sends a message using a satellite uplink. So basically the ranger would get a message being sent across using a satellite, and that only says, I've seen an elephant, or I've seen a rhino, or I've seen a human entering the area. So this is something that is currently not possible. So the only thing that camera traps are being able to do right now is just take a picture, and the picture remains on the device itself. So you can imagine that with this addition, we enable the rangers to have a lot more data, and they can use that data to make a decision whether or not to go into the area. So about this data, because this is basically where the workshop now is focused on. You can imagine that we are gathering a lot of data as well. right? So if we have a lot of these sensors in the field, and they collect these alerts. So if, like for instance, a person, like you see on the slide, is walking in that area, these sensors will be picking up phone signals if the person's tried to call, or based on a Wi-Fi signal. What we are working on right now also is to look into the possibilities of collecting all that data and, for instance, come up with machine learning algorithms to detect if there are if there's anything that we can learn from certain days in the year or weeks in the year, are there any poaching hotspot days in a year, or what are the popular routes through an area. So I can imagine that if there are some data scientists out there here in the chat, and there probably are, I can imagine that you can do a lot of cool stuff with the data that we're going to collect. So reach out to us if you have these creative ideas, because we're always looking for new innovative plans on that. So like I said, a lot of time we can talk about this, but that time is unfortunately not there. So we have to speed it up a little bit. But again, if you have ideas on that, if you see, hey, well, I have some cool plans that we can do, reach out to us, and that'd be very cool. Same for the camera trap, right? So these camera traps, they are already being used. So the one you see in the photo over there is just it's a Bushnell camera. They're being extensively used by many organizations doing something with conservation or human-elephant conflict in general. The box you see over there on the left and the solar panel, these are the items that we added to the camera trap. So what happens is what you see in the picture illustrated is photos being taken, being sent to our smart hub, we call it, being analyzed with machine learning. And then if anything of interest is on the photo, it's being sent to a ranger or to a central point. So, and again, you can imagine these cameras being placed strategically in a national park. It's going to be taking a lot of photos, and we are able to analyze what's on it. So again, this is collecting a lot of data. And probably you wonder, but how do you know what's on the photo? This is something that we've been developing together with University of Stirling, which provided us with many photos of wildlife, people. So we were able to train a machine learning model. And for every national park currently that we do a rollout, we ask them for pictures of the environment, pictures of where the camera traps will be installed, so that we can train a new model specific for that region. And obviously it would be very cool if we can later on create a generic model. And my colleague Thijs here is also working on something like that to make it possible to have like one big model that will work for all regions. And again, we are reaching out to people here in the chat as well. If you have any ideas or you have any bells ringing and say, hey, well, look into this or look into that, please reach out to us. Little close-up of the camera trap system that I just mentioned. And again, this is a smart hub, and the Bushnell that I just mentioned. This is something you can just, if you go online, you can just buy it and people do it. It's something that everyone can use. This is the first prototype of the GSM sensor that we created, just sitting on a tree in the Netherlands. All right, so I've come to the end of my my slides. There's just one thing that I want to mention. Every time I give a presentation, I talk with many engineers. I talk with many very bright, smart people, and there's always one thing that I ask, and that is please look into all these challenges that are out there in conservation, and please assume that nobody's working on them, because that was something that I found in 2016 when I first started this project with Greenpeace, and later on I learned all these troubling things about conservation and poaching in general. I always assumed, well, it's on the news, right? These are headlines in the news. Someone is working on it, or there's just a major organization. And most of the time the answer is no, or it's, not as good as it should be. So I think that in general, there are so many bright, so many smart people, and also here tonight, the fact that you are here tonight on this hour says a lot. So that's one thing I want to give before the end of my presentation. So thanks for listening, and again, reach out to us if you have any cool ideas or anything.
All right, thanks a lot, Tim. Very cool. I think your colleague Thijs already did a lot of live answering in the chat, so that's nice. Very convenient. I don't know if there were any unanswered questions so far. Just looking through it. If anyone has a question, feel free to raise your hand, unmute yourself.
I think Andrew had one question about IMSI. So maybe, Andrew, do you want to ask the question?
Oh, sorry, it already got answered.
Got answered, okay.
I have a question, actually. I was wondering, to what extent could this, for example, these camera pictures also be used in a court, or have you already gotten to this point where you're really also providing evidence for the justice system to persecute the poachers?
Yeah, so that pretty much relates to the IMSI that is being asked. So what we learned from different parties is that court cases are very, very, very difficult. So even if poachers do get arrested red-handed, it's very difficult to get them behind bars because many different reasons. So photos being used in court, yeah, it does happen, especially with the larger cases where a big organization is being rolled up. But it would be possible to do that because the photos will be still there. They are just as available as any other camera trap photos. Yeah.
All right, thanks. I think Oscar had a question that maybe you can explain a bit more, because I think Thijs didn't completely get it.
Oh, okay, sorry, then I just wanted to ask in the chat, but that's fine. No, I just assuming I'm from Colombia, assuming my experience that sometimes people do some local use of fauna. And that is a little bit different to the structured market of the trafficking of some species. So in some extent, we have a lot of trouble, like with the criminalization of certain people in these parts, with these people that are really involved in the business. So in what extent, because you are collecting data, but I guess that is quite difficult to make that difference. So how you can address that challenge? That's like kind of my first question. And the second one is, I mean, I know that what you are doing is very difficult, very challenging, and it's very important to have like more information about what is happening in terms of trafficking. But then I'm not very sure, and I didn't get like exactly what is the possible strategy to reduce or to manage the use of fauna in an illegal way. So that's kind of is my question, like the criminalization of people who are doing it to protect more certain areas than others, etc. So
yeah, a very good question. I totally agree with you. And so what we always say is that we are a part of the solution and not the solution. So yeah, and this is, I mean, it probably is one of the most complex challenges in conservation, right? I mean, it's like you said, it's not one person. It's almost an entire network sometimes, and it's covering different kinds of countries. So yeah, there's a lot to it. So that's difficult, and I think that on all these parts work needs to be done. right? So this is just one part, and still there needs more being done on that part as well. So we are far from a final solution, but that doesn't mean that we shouldn't try.
Sure, it's difficult. I know.
All right. Thanks a lot, Tim. I think maybe we move on to Jan-Kees. There's a lot going on in the chat, but we can also discuss it later.
Welcome everyone. My name is Jan-Kees Schakel, and there's lots of things we would like to discuss later also with Tim, because there's I think lots of opportunities to join forces, so to speak. My focus of the talk will be about data science, of course, for nature conservation and wildlife protection. And I'm working with two computers, so I was a little bit confused about the screen. I am the founder of Sensing Clues, and in my other daily life, I am a special advisor, I'm a strategic advisor for special operations within the police, the organized crime type of work, and I'm also a research fellow at a number of universities. Sensing Clues is actually a foundation above more than 40 volunteers. Among a number of them are data scientists. And we develop technologies for nature conservation, state-of-art stuff, but completely on the Intel side. So where Tim and others are working on sensors and cameras in the field, we are working on the data that these systems produce, and also that rangers produce, and we create intelligence of it to support ranger operations and to support investigations if necessary. We are active in quite a lot of countries, and I'm always inspired by the animals that we are able to help protect. I mean, we don't protect these animals, of course, but the ranger teams that we support with our technologies are in the front lines, and we support them to save and protect these animals. In our work, and the most of the data scientists among us will recognize this, we combine the functional domain of ecology and biology with law enforcement, and on the technical side with data science and IT, software development, app development, those types of things. And on the methodological side, we work on the development of digital twins. I will talk about that a little bit more later. And on Impala's methods and CSA methods, which are methods to fight organized crime, and in this case, of course, organized wildlife crime. We do this with lots of volunteers, but also with what we call corporate volunteers. And those are volunteers of the companies that you see here listed. Those companies provide us with consultancy hours, but also with software, with hardware, with hosting services, those types of things, but also with data science knowledge. We work from data we collect in the field from the Cluey app that we created ourselves, but also from other sources that we can connect to the platform. We make information of it by correlating all the information together with a quite sophisticated already data science type of model and knowledge model. From that, we create knowledge and, of course, the wisdom to protect these areas, to develop strategies to turn wild spaces into safe havens. And in all that process, we always have the end user in mind. And those are rangers who know their steel, they know how to protect wildlife, but they don't know too much about data science. They don't know anything about technical engineering stuff. And maybe they even shouldn't, because there's many other people who know. So we try to bring the technology and the information that is yielded from it at their fingerprints, at their fingertips. So what you see here is one of the applications. We call it Focus. It's for command and control situations, and it answers what we call within the police the 7 golden W's. Where is what happening? When is it happening? What can we learn about it? Who is involved? Who saw it? What is the modus operandi, etc. So the core of the platform that we developed is what we call the wildlife tool suite. And it's actually a document store, which means any type of document, JSON or police report or a photo from a camera is stored in it. It's also geostore, so anything that we can locate on a map or can pinpoint on a map is provided with coordinates and can be analyzed in a geospatial sphere, time geospatial. We have on top of that a triple store, which allows us to find relations and oddities in data much more easily than in traditional databases, which we of course also support. It's all cloud-based, which allows us to work together with other parties much easier and to provide continuous delivery of new features. It's highly secure. The platform is also being used, for example, by CIA and FBI. It's real-time, of course, when possible, and it has a very powerful search facility. This is the core for many of the things that we do with the data. The ones colored are the data science related. The GLUI is for collecting, focus for command and control. But in the Wildcat, I will dive into that a little bit deeper. It's where the data scientists are working on what we call Wildcat apps, small applications that can be used by rangers in the field, for example, to create a heat map or a risk map or any other type of report. And the Cayman is the working name for something that I will explain a little bit more about also. It's about animal recognition and counting animals on photos. Other than that, of course, the platform can connect to powerful tools like Power BI, Arcinfo Online, etc. And there's an API to connect with any other system. So this is an opportunity for example, to work together with Tim to connect photos and to process them with Cayman. So today, actually, it was very nice. We are competing in the Kaggle competition for image recognition. And when I made this presentation this morning, we were second at this moment. The race is going on for 2 weeks. But then this afternoon, Hugo, who's in the call, tried an experiment and managed to get us first. So it's at the moment, it's the status of how well we are able to recognize species on photos and count the number of species on these photos. This is actually a development that we are working very hard on with a number of our volunteer organizations, Smart Divisions, Fantasy AI, and DKW, which is Hugo. And we are planning to release the full software end-to-end by this summer, which means that photos that are identified, that are classified, when they are above a certain threshold, we trust them, and then the photos, including the classifications and the data, are loaded to the platform and can be used for analytics. But if we doubt it, for example, because the certainty factor is something like 50%, then the result, the photo, will be shown to an end user who can then say, well, this is actually not an elephant, it's something else. And then he can correct that, which means the human is in the loop. And the corrected images then are being used to train the model further. Actually, we are also working on the Serval sensor, which is a sound event recognition for vigilance and localization. And this is also a project where Hugo in the call has been working on quite hard. You see the prototype in the right upper corner, which was about 3-4 years ago. It already worked on a Raspberry Pi. Now it's working on the box below, and it can recognize the sounds that you see on the right list. We are working on this. We are actually very much a data science community, and actually we need help from people like maybe Tim and others to make these boxes and get them in the field, because we are good in the algorithms, but not that good in making these boxes and making them communicate in the field. Wildcat is actually the toolbox, the analyst toolbox for actually 3 types of users. Data scientists can use any tool like RStudio, Python, Jupyter Notebooks, etc., Gephi, to create apps like I'm going to show you a few. Analysts can use them to analyze patterns in the field using the applications that data scientists have made for them. And of course, in the end, that's our focus. The apps that we create should be useful and usable by end users like rangers who sometimes, I'm just back from a training in Burkina Faso where we trained rangers analysts for 2 weeks, and the half of them had never touched a computer before. And after the 2 weeks, they were all able to use all these different tools because they are just clicking things that they already know about and create the observation maps, etc., without understanding the algorithms in the backend. But if you are a data scientist, you can use the algorithms created already by others, improve them, or create brand new ones. And in the platform, you actually have the data harmonized semantically and readily available for your analytical job. And if there are data scientists among us, then all you know is that you all know that 80% of your time you're working on standardization and harmonizing data. That's actually taken care of. So you can spend all your energy on the algorithms. These are a few examples. The map that you see on the right, I'm going to explain a little bit more about it. But of course, you can create densities of patrols, of observations. Observations could be for specific species, or for snares, or for poaching incidents that you have seen, or from maybe charcoaling and other problems. And one of the things we are really excited about are the digital twins. We are creating for every park that we are working with a digital twin, which is not only a picture of the area with a number of layers, but which also simulates the processes that go on in these areas. And this is actually a kind of sweet heaven for data scientists because it's very complicated stuff. It's all very dynamic. And it's also including social practices, of course, of poachers and defenders, which you need to model to create real useful products. This is an example that we created for a project of us in Italy. You see here that we combine scientific knowledge, what we know about preferences of the bear, in this case, about his habitat, type of vegetations he likes, the types of things he doesn't like. We combine that with open source data that we can get from, for example, Esri or OpenStreetMaps and other layers, and from NASA. And we combine that also with the dynamic information that is being collected by the rangers on a daily basis. And that actually gives us an indication of the distribution of the bear, how he is using the habitat that is suitable for him. But you can also see habitats that are maybe very suitable, but kind of separated by things that we might be able to solve. So we here are using these maps to find corridors and to remove obstructions in the field that are not always very obvious on first sight. One of the things that we learned when we were looking at this with the rangers in the field was that most of the roadkills and human-wildlife conflicts in relation to the bear were happening in the corridor, in the buffer zones. Those are the yellow lines on these maps across, just adjacent the nature reserves. I can tell more about this in another talk. Many of the things, and many of the, also within the police, but also in nature conservation, you often see that people create hotspots. And actually a hotspot is a very useful tool to know where many things have been seen. But of course, it always is also correlated to where you have been. If you are often at a certain location, then of course the chance of seeing something there is bigger. And maybe if you are in some places not very often and you see every time you see something there, then the chance of course is higher in that location. So using Bayesian statistics and the models that we already created for heat maps, we actually are able to create risk maps and likelihood maps. And the likelihood map is, for example, where can I find the elephant? Where is the likelihood to find elephants or snares the highest? And when we talk about snares, of course, we talk about risks. So that is what you see on the right-hand side, where the hotspots are always coloring in the center of the map. You see the risk maps glow to the edges and give you also some predictive information about adjacent area, which are adjacent to the yellow or the coloring parts of the map. Those are places you have not visited yet, but which are highly likely to find more of that same observation, whether it's a snare or charcoal or fire or maybe just a species. We are working, and this is almost live, on augmenting that with information that we get from open sources like the the vegetation index, the moisture index, elevation, slopes, etc. Those are all open source available. And we use that to extrapolate the predictions that we already created so that we can make a prediction and also an instruction for the rangers. So this is what you can call it prescriptive, in some would say, prescriptive advice of where they should go in their area to fight the problem that they have prioritized. Because the tools are simply tools, we also have founded an academy because people need to learn, of course, how to interpret these maps and these products. Also to improve the data collection methods. If you collect information in a very random way, it could be very good. But if you do, there are some ways to improve it. For example, if your aim is to conduct a real census, to estimate how many animals of a certain species are within the area, then you have to use a more methodological, a more structured way of collecting the data. We help them with the analytical skills, but also, of course, with the law enforcement principles. The question you ask about, can we use a photo for evidence? Those are, of course, also questions that people have in the field, and we help them to interpret their mandates they have, the laws they have, and how to apply these and how to collect evidence from a crime scene, including maybe photos. We also have a data science for nature conservation training of 12 days, which is really for the data scientists and other scientists that are sometimes available within these organizations. Actually, Hugo created this training for the Dutch communities. It's accredited by the Open University. But we made a special track of it for nature conservation because there's lots of more is related to geospatial information rather than information that banks and insurance companies are after, like clicking behavior and so on, improving their sales. We are looking at a few other aspects which deserve special attention. The last slide, or last two actually, how people conceive it. Well, they conceive it like, whoa, is this possible? Can it be so simple for us and so powerful? And the biggest compliment for us is, of course, when people say it made my life really easy, or it really changed the way we work, because we are now more effective than ever before. And that's it. And I would like to end with a question, because I expect there's lots of data scientists around here. If you have the time, let's say 4 or 5 hours or more per week, to work on projects like these, have ideas, or want to work on our digital twins, or on the image recognition or the sound recognition, say hello at sensiclues.org. Contact me directly. And of course, you are most welcome to join. Thank you.
All right, thanks a lot, Jan-Kees. Again, very cool. You also had a person in the chat live answering questions, Hugo. So
Yes,
it's
good,
very
good.
convenient. Is there any questions? I'm just looking at the chat.
No, I think all the questions have been answered. Unless if anyone wants to ask a question, you can raise your hand using Zoom. No.
I have a question again.
Yes.
Could we use this in the Netherlands for the wolf, for example? Could you switch this to say, okay, when are sheep going to be killed by a wolf? Because obviously now we have a predator again,
Yeah.
Finally.
Finally.
Yeah, would that work?
Yes, of course, no problem at all, yes. We work with organizations that are actually in the field, the boots on the ground. So if there's an organization, or there could be volunteers, or there could be real organizations like State Forestry Department or something like that. If they reach out to us and ask our help, we can certainly adapt it very easily. Actually, the system is made in such a way that adapting it to a certain situation, you saw the world map where we are working, it's all being done with one system. And the only thing that you sometimes find is that something is missing, and then we can simply add it. The graph model that is behind it, which is a knowledge model about nature conservation, human-wildlife conflicts, and law enforcement within nature conservation areas, is very flexible, and it can very easily be extended if necessary. But rules are already in it. And we also support the Dutch language if English would be a problem.
Awesome. Would be nice.
Excellent.
Would be very nice indeed.
I have a question, short question. Jan-Kees, I assume that you also do a lot of data collection when it comes to analysis and gathering information. Is that the data that is collected, is that part of the open data initiative, or is it public? Is it somewhere in a repository?
Yeah, that's a very good question, because of course working with these data is for data scientists a must. We actually support our partners in the field, and it's their data, it's not ours. So we made the platform in such a way that the data is really well protected, and we even had a very powerful team of hackers from Deloitte trying to crash it, and they didn't. We were not able. Of course, they found some weaknesses, but they couldn't get in. And if data scientists or research organizations want to work on it or want to work on a new model, then it's always in collaboration with the field partner, because they own the data. And if they think it's a good idea, then of course we will sign an NDA and you can work on the data. Otherwise, we are not able to provide you with the data because it's simply not ours.
Perfect, thank you.
All right. Well,
I think Liam had a question.
Oh, there's another question by Liam.
Yeah. So the first one I wanted to ask was about this this data science for nature conservation program. So is that you just do that for local partners, or is it something that people here can also participate in?
Yes, actually, we are planning. It's planning. It's still needs a lot of work to get it off the ground, but we are planning to give the first course in January in South Africa, together with the Wildlife Forensics Academy, that will be the first time that we will be conducting it. If there's a sufficient number of trainees, and those 12 trainees maximum for one class, we can start earlier, but we have not yet. As you see, we are all data scientists and engineers, and we are not very good yet at marketing, so we have not shouted it out all over the internet. If there's any people here around who say, well, I know how to do that, then please contact us. But yes, if it's open for any data scientist interested in nature conservation and wildlife protection.
Cool. And just another thing that might be of interest to you, I don't know if you work in Ngorongoro Crater in Tanzania, but I'm in a research project at the moment. We're setting up weather stations to collect fine-scale environmental data. So if that could be interesting to anything that you're doing, we could maybe have a chat about that.
Very close to the Ngorongoro with a partner called SPAMS Foundation. And they are, I don't know if you know them, but they are working in that area on human-wildlife conflicts. So it might be, I mean, the first thing we always ask, if people want to use our platform, they have their own ideas, welcome. If we work for partners, then we always start with the problem. So what is the problem? How can we address the problem? What data do we need to address this problem? And then if climate data or any other type of data is useful, then we want to incorporate it. But that is the process. And of course, you can imagine that climate data, weather information is very important for predicting poaching incidents, for example, in the next few days or weeks. Because if the terrain is very muddy and difficult to travel, there will be less poaching. By full moon, it's known there will be more poaching incidents because it's very light. So having that type of data available is very useful. We always also try to make it in such a way that we develop it once and can apply it in all the different parks that we work. So we try to make it not necessarily only for the PAMS Foundation in this case, but also for the project in Nepal or in the Amazon, etc. Which is not always easy, and it's not always possible. which is not a problem because then we make it just custom tailor-made. But sometimes it is, and then it's, of course, your impact is bigger. Yeah, so
Thanks.
if you have that data, let's have a chat.
Yeah, well, it's in the process of setting up the data collection, but yeah,
okay, cool.
yeah, we can have a chat about that.
Yeah, cool. Yeah, also what you can do with it later if you collect
the
data.
Yeah, cool. Thanks.
Welcome.
All right. I think there's no more questions now.
Great.
All right. Well, everyone knows how to find us anytime, any place.
Yeah, maybe put your email in the chat again. Was it hello@sensiclues? And then people can keep it in mind. And of course, there's more space for questions later, but then we first go to Timo from Observation International.
Well, good evening. I'll be taking you back from Africa to Europe with the biodiversity. Let me first start by sharing my screen. Is it possible? Is it visible for everybody?
Yes, I can see it.
Great, thanks. Well, hi, my name is Timo. I work for Observation International. We are a platform for citizen science and scientists based in the Netherlands, but we work, I think the international part makes it clear that we work international. So we are a nature platform for people to put in their observations of all kinds of species. So not only birds, not only mammals, not only butterflies, but we try to collect everything. So that's a big challenge working with species lists, you can probably imagine. Western Europe is pretty easy, but going to Costa Rica or any kind of rainforest is it's a challenge. So, but we're doing pretty good. I will give this presentation and I will try to give you a view of our platform. I don't have the luxury of somebody backing me up with the questions, so try to save them until the end because I do not know if I can see them right now. So I'll be answering the questions after the presentation. So what is this platform? We started about 20 years ago when the internet was still, let's say it's not as big as it is now. When people wanted to report their birds, they used Yahoo groups. For the more younger people, Yahoo used to be, I think, the most biggest internet company in the world. But it was a pretty elite group of people. So you had to have seen more than 500 bird species in Europe or you couldn't enter. And our idea was that biodiversity is for everybody. Everybody sees birds, everybody sees mammals, everybody has a butterfly in their garden or sees them from the balcony. So we wanted to expand the biodiversity registration to everybody. Right now we are the largest platform of nature sightings in the Netherlands and Belgium. And as I told you before, we're multi-thematic. So we do mammals, insects, birds, plants, and mushrooms too. And that last one is really tough, but we're doing good. Our goal is to store and share as many observations as possible. And we want to capture natural richness for now and the future. So we do not only want to capture the richness from now, but we also encourage people. My grandpa used to have a lot of books in his shelf with observations he did when he went on field trips. And there's a lot of historic data out there that has not been registered by anybody. It's just sitting there. So we encourage people to enter all data too. And the next bullet point is pretty important. We collect data, but we do not analyze the data. So we have bulks and bulks of data. We'll show you some numbers later on. But this is probably a nightmare to you people, data analysts, but we do nothing with them, with the data. So if anybody has good ideas, we're open to that. But the good thing is that the observations that are put through on our platform are being validated manually and automatically. I will tell something more of that later. And in the meanwhile, we're 20 years later, but we are available in 40 languages right now. And it's easy to translate if a new country joins the observation family. Well, if you look at big data, we got more than 150 million observations right now in our database, collected by more than 300,000 people. And we have collected 25 million photographs of flora and fauna. There's also a small corner in our database that collects sounds. More and more people try to collect sounds. It becomes more easy having a good phone. Recording sounds is more easy now than it used to be. So, but not only birds make sounds, amphibians also make sounds, crickets and grasshoppers, and even some moths make sounds when they're in panic mode. So if you want to know how a moth sounds, just look in our database. 2020 was a record year for us, mainly because of COVID. We encourage people to go look in their garden. Not only grab your car and travel 50 or 60 miles to see some animals, but there are also a lot of animals in your garden. So just explore. So we encourage that, and in the Netherlands alone, we collected more than 20 million observations in 1 year. So if you look at our website, this is the front page. It is available for everybody. Making an account is free. Using our mobile applications for registering biodiversity are also free. So what you see on the current website, on the front page, are the recent rarities, the latest news, and it's a portal to our subsites. And I will show you some more of the subsites later on. We encourage people to go mobile. And one of the first things we encourage people when joining the platform is to go away from their computer and just go outside and explore and see if you can find biodiversity. So why we say mobile is the best way to go is it works offline, so you do not need an internet connection. So for people in Belgium and the Netherlands, we probably always have a pretty decent internet connection. But if you go to another country very close to Germany, for example, it can already be troublesome. We have lists for all species for all countries. You can input, when you're in the field, you can input observations through speech. So if I, for example, walk outside and I see some cranes flying over, I can start up my app, click on the sound icon, and I can say to my phone, 2 cranes flying over Northwest, and it will just register all the info it needs. You can add pictures and sounds in the field, and it works. We say it works anywhere, anytime, any species, and so far we're holding up to that promise. We also have built-in image recognition, and I will talk about the image recognition later on. So I told you we collected millions and millions of media, pictures and sounds. So if you're looking for an adult picture of a mountain lion or cougar, you can look it up. But the most interesting part is that you can also look at specific life forms. For example, for butterflies, if you want to see what kind of caterpillar of a specific species looks like, you can also find that information. And also for mushrooms, for example, mushrooms go from 0 to 100 in 5 days, and with about 50 different, they can look different every hour. So if you want to look in the database for all those different expressions from the fungi, you can look them up if you want to. we collect information not only about the species you've seen. So if you, for example, look at the screenshots in my presentation, you can see a distribution map of the little egret. The little egret is, the Dutch people probably know the great egret, Ardea alba. The little egret is a little cousin, and you can see the distribution map across Europe here, but you can also see information about phenology. So when are the egrets coming in, when are they leaving again? And we also collect information about locations. So if you wanna look up your favorite location nearby, you can see how many species have been seen there. What's the best time of the year to go there to see, for example, butterflies? So all this data together gives a pretty complete view of a specific location or of the specific species you're looking for. So we try to build local communities. I think everybody agrees that going local is the way to go. In the 90s and in the beginning of the 20s, we used to hear a lot from go international, go bigger, try to get as many countries as possible. But going local is really the key to success, because if you wanna make people care about their local biodiversity, you have to let them know what the local biodiversity is. So what we try to do, we organize bioblitzes. This is for one city in the southern parts of the Netherlands. And you can set, for example, you can set a specific goal. So this city wants to see, I think, 500 species in a year or in a specific month. And you can try to get everybody on board and look up the information that they need. We organize events. We do rankings because we are still hunters. So we are not shooting anymore. Yeah, they do in Africa, sorry. But in the Netherlands, we're still hunters, but most of the people do not shoot anymore. So, but we do want to be the big gun. We do want to be on board. We want to be the leader. So especially white males, sorry, we want to be on top. So that's why we do the rankings. We organize a lot of, we offer sub-sites. So if people want to join, they get their own sub-site for their own region. So they can see how many people are collecting data and what kind of species are being seen. So one of our biggest strengths is validation. With all these data coming in, it can really easily be misjudged as big data, but not very valuable. So we have a team of 350 experts right now, ecologists, biologists, fans of a specific species group. They help us validate all the data. So if I report a picture of, for example, this common buzzard here, you always get an answer if the species is correct or not. So, and that really makes a difference for this database. You always have to take in account that you have some kind of bias in the database. So some journalists, they dive into our portal and they make an article for the newspaper and they say the common buzzard is the most common bird in the Netherlands. No, the common buzzard is not the most common bird in the Netherlands. It's the most popular bird in the Netherlands, because the more sightings there are does not mean the bird is common. It just means it's being popular with the observers. So that's the problem right now with dealing with our data. We have a lot of data and I think we can do a lot of useful stuff with it, but we do not have a data analyst on board. We do not have anybody looking at the data and making a good judgment for species X or species Y, for example. Well, I use, most of the people use observation as a personal nature diary. You can collect all your pictures. This is a sample of my pictures I made on a trip in Germany or Austria, I see. And if I look at my own map, you can see exactly where I live. And you can also see where I go for my nature adventures. So with these kind of overviews, we try to give people the tools working with data sets and working with their own data and getting some fun information out of that. So we, how do I say that? Well, I'll skip it. I'll go to the next one. So if you want to submit an observation at the platform, we need 3 basic things. We need a species, we need a date, and we need a region. So where have you seen this species, on what date, and what was the species name? So if you do not know the species name, it's not a problem. You can add animal unknown, for example, of bird unknown, mushroom unknown. And if you add a picture, the validators, so the people who know more, probably know more than you, they will tell you what kind of species it is. And that's and that makes people really happy. So they want to know what's growing outside, and if they can collect the names, they can participate in rankings, and it will be the chances they are coming back will be a lot bigger. So we try to collect as much data as possible, of course. The 3 ones are the basic observation, but you can also see here that you can insert activity, life stage, the observation method, was the bird or the insect on or in a specific tree or bush, what kind of counting method did you use, is there any external reference you want to use, and really important is, do you want to obscure or hide your observation? Because sometimes you see a species that you want to hide. You do not want 200 photographers to go to that species and make the bird fly away, for example. So that's really the other side of the medallion. I don't know if that's an English phrase, but it's a Dutch one. So a lot of species we obscure from ourselves. So any crane in summertime, we obscure. Any owl in urban environment in winter, we obscure, because a lot of people go there. If they see this, if they see the specific owl or the specific species on our website, they want to go there they want to make pictures, and everybody wants to make the perfect picture. The one picture that will get them in National Geographic. They will never get there, but everybody wants to make the picture. So we try to protect the animals by obscuring certain species. So now for our image recognition, we use our mobile application Obsidentify. It's for Western Europe. The technique, we call it NIA, Nature Identification Application, and it recognizes around 22,000 species right now in Western Europe, of all species groups. So today we launched our new application, or an update of Obsidentify, and we try to get people on board by getting them to join challenges and getting them to giving them badges if they're participating in a specific challenge. So through gamification, we want to make people come to the app and explore the nature around them. For example, I walked in the forest a couple of weeks ago, and for the first time in my life, I saw 2 kids explaining their grandfather and their grandmother what species they saw on the ground. So I think that's a revolution. So if I look at the active users in the Netherlands, you can see this app is being used a lot. People want to know what's around them. People want to know what the biodiversity around them is. So this app gives them the tool. They do not have to buy 50 field guides. They do not have to buy or invest in an online course to know all the species. We are telling them what species it is, and through this app, we are discovering new populations of species we thought were rare, species we thought we never found again in a specific part of our country, and we are. And the good thing is about the AI, the AI is finding new. How do I say this in English? The AI is finding new, for example, if you see a butterfly, there are specific markings on it. So we try to figure out what the specific markings are on this butterfly, for example, and the AI is discovering new lines in their wings we've never seen as that the line was never important for putting on the name on that specific species, but it is. So we are discovering new ways to look at species right now through AI. So that was the presentation. Please join us. We're available in all countries now. We are looking for ways to building local communities. People can use our apps for free. It's for Android and for Apple, iOS. Registering is free, and we are looking forward to your observations.
All right, thanks a lot, Timo. I saw some questions coming by in the chat. I think Liam had the first one. Liam, do you want to unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, sure. I think it was mostly answered. It was about the other information that you collect. So I was wondering about the other behavioral data you get. But I suppose I can expand the question. I saw you have a notes section where people can record that. Is it frequent that people give that information?
Yeah, and we, the more we ask for that, so if we have a specific project and we ask for specific information, they will give it to us. If we don't ask anything, we're not getting anything.
Mm-hmm.
So if we're setting up a project for gray goose, for example, they will give us the information we need. So if you see a nest, how many eggs do you see? Is there any garbage nearby? Is there stuff like that? Yeah.
All right. I think Allard has some thoughts. He's like dropping ideas in the chat.
Okay.
Allard, do you maybe want to talk about some of them?
I see some stuff about allowing people to create their own quiz within a certain set, pre-set up a quiz and share with friends, colleagues to get a score. That's a great idea. We've thought about that, but we need to make sure we're not using any pictures with a different license. So it's 2021, so we have to be really careful. And we need to ask people if we can use their pictures, but it's a good idea. Yeah, I think it's a great way to expand knowledge and to, especially now when the AI is telling you everything and the learning part is diminishing. So it could be a good idea. Thanks.
Jan-Kees has some questions on APIs and open source.
Yeah, it's I listened to you with admiration. It's very, very well done and well organized. And your focus is very much on open source data. And where we look at the parks, our collection data, of course, is owned by the park, and we allow them and enable them to collect the data that they need. But of course, if, for example, now we are working in Madagascar, there's more than 100 types of lemurs, and sometimes the rangers don't even know the difference between one and the other, then an application like yours would be fantastic. and maybe they can collect it using your applications. That would be very cool. And of course, they can hide it sometimes because some of the species are too valuable. You don't want to broadcast that this species can be found here because they will be poached.
Yeah.
But at the same time, one of the things that we always struggling with is the silos, right? The data silos. So is it possible to use your app in the field, also in the parks where we work, and have an API so that we can use the data that is collected in that region to enhance the analytics, our analytics?
Yeah, here's my email address, and the answer is yes, because
very good.
We have a learning street, as we call it. It's based on deep learning, and if you have enough pictures, and the enough is not so science-based, but if you have enough pictures of a specific lemur, we can learn the system to recognize it. So we're doing these projects with Naturalis in Leiden. So it would be really great to, for example, start the lemur project and try to see how far we can go.
Cool.
Yeah.
Cool. There's another project in the Amazon where we've got very different types of species, of course. And again, if they can use these open source tools and we can combine them with the closed data of these projects, that would be fantastic. So let's discuss. Very cool.
We're now in the phase that the learning street is pretty much complete, so we can add new species really easy. And we're trying to add context now. So making the difference about a butterfly and a caterpillar, for example, is really important for people, but also recognizing individuals like in seals and killer whales. But also I've talked to a guy in Barcelona who was interested in recognizing zebras because the pattern is also the technique is there, and I think it's pretty easy, but we need time. That's the only thing we need. We can make everything, but we don't have time.
I know. No, that's why I'm asking for the API, because we are also working on slightly different focus sometimes. But if you can use and reuse the different components that you make, then of course we could help each other quite a lot.
Yeah, it would be great.
Cool, thanks.
Carly has her hand up for a question.
Hi, this is great because I study lemurs in Madagascar. So great example brought up there. And I can attest that yes, there are lemurs that different lemur species that look very similar. And I don't even know whether a machine learning model could do a better job.
The answer is always not yet.
Right. Yes. I had a question about, you're talking about like animal recognition in images. Have you worked with Mega Detector from?
No, we haven't. I know what it is, but we have not. Yeah.
Okay. Cause that would be that's all like open source. You can run images through it, and it's like this kind of big global like model. Yeah, and I'm seeing that Jan said he does. That would be a really good thing to maybe look into or talk to. I have colleagues who are working on it, and they're always looking for more images because, right, again, you always want more data. And then similarly, the Wildlife Insights project, which is, I don't know if you are you working with them at all? Because they also, I'm just thinking of like these big kind of image camera trapping, machine learning kind of projects.
Yeah, we've worked with them, and we've also got some projects going on right now in Greenland and in Germany and in the Netherlands. We have boxes set up that attract insects in nighttime, and we get about I think more than 1 million sightings per night. They just register what comes by and make a picture, and we see what it is. So we used to do the insect count by killing them all in alcohol. So we can now we can now track them because the problem is already big enough. We don't want to kill anymore. So that's working pretty good. But one question about the lemurs: how vocal are lemurs?
How vocal? Oh, it very much depends on the species. The species this is very like, my dissertation is literally on passive acoustic monitoring of black and white ruffed lemurs, which if I turn off my camera, they are my Zoom profile picture. So it's these little tree panda looking creatures. And they are incredibly vocal, which makes it great for passive acoustics. I don't know if that's what you were getting at.
Exactly.
But there are some that are, the frequency range for different species is there are some mouse lemurs that produce ultrasonics. So you'd need like bat type detector stuff there. They really range, and they overlap a lot in like in both frequency and time space. So basically they overlap a lot. It's hard.
Yeah, okay, so for certain species you could set up audio recognition by sound, because we do that with bird sounds too. Specific birds look alike, but they make a different sound, and some species we can see what it is by picture. So just mail me. We can always see what's possible.
Yeah, I think integrating those two kind of types of sensors is going to be really fruitful. Like combining the
we're
sensor
doing the same
types.
with bat detectors in urban cities. So we have sensors there, and we can see what species of bats are coming through.
Okay, I think Giel had a question on validation of data. Giel, can you ask your... there you are.
Yeah, my internet connection is very bad, so I missed half of the speeches, I'm afraid. But I was just wondering about observations. I put in a lot of observations myself, also on Waarneming. But sometimes I get a message about, yes, this is correct, or something like that. But do you only validate observations where the observer says he or she is uncertain, or?
No, we try to validate all the data with media. So, and that's why local communities are really important. So for example, if I put in 50 peregrine falcons in my neighborhood, somebody's going to ask why 50? Because 50 peregrine falcons is pretty rare in the Netherlands. I think anywhere in the world, but it's just an example. And but most of the time we only look at the media. So if is the picture correct, and is the soundscape or the sound recording correct?
So rare, let's say, species in an area where you don't expect them, you don't filter them out.
Yeah, but that's why the local community is important. So I can see an ostrich here in my street, but nobody's gonna believe me. So really rare sightings are just gonna be not going to be approved. They're going to be declined, so they're not going to put through to GBIF or whatever database they're going to in the end.
Another question I had: do you also connect your data with data from Floron and Sovon and Ravon and that kind of the other organizations?
Yes. All our data is open for people who do not have a commercial intent. So everybody's using our data to get a better view of the biodiversity in the region they are looking for.
Okay, but it's one way. It's not the bi-directional from Sovon etc. to Waarneming.
Yeah, sometimes it is, but specific projects. Yeah.
Okay. And one last question. You make everything free, but how are you funded? How is Waarneming.nl funded?
Great questions. That's why that's the question I ask myself many times. But No, we are getting paid, and we are getting paid by the Dutch government, by the Belgian government, and also by Naturalis. So collecting big data for biodiversity is getting more important every day. So that's where our funding is coming through. And we have some specific projects going on. For example, with the Bill Gates Foundation, we built the image recognition for 4 species of moths that are damaging to crops and damaging to human health. So if anybody in Africa makes a picture of that specific caterpillar or butterfly, they get from the Bill Gates Foundation they get seeds so they can plant that gets rid of those caterpillars and butterflies. So that is a commercial project we're doing.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. I see one more question from Carly. How does this overlap with functionality in iNaturalist or eBird, for example? It does have a big overlap, yeah. eBird is only for birds, and iNaturalist is doing a great job. It's an American initiative, so their image recognition is a lot better in the United States, and our image recognition right now is a lot better in Europe and Africa, I think. So just try to use. It's the same message, I think. Go local. So if you're in America, just go use iNaturalist. It's our biggest competitor, but they're doing a great job. So. We tried to talk to them about the collaboration, but the first thing they asked is they want to buy us. So I think we'll hold on for a moment.
I think we have answered all the questions. I don't see any questions missed. So maybe there is a final audience from our audience. They have a final question you want to ask. And otherwise, raise your hand. And if there are no questions, I see Andrew raising his hand.
Awesome. Yeah, so a little side note is we're correlate, and the thing that binds us together is we're data scientists that want to use our skill sets for good. Tim had a comment about the bystander effect for projects that need help. Any project you see that you think someone is handling it, probably no one's handling it. What we mostly see is that it's difficult to find specific issues in projects that need help. So maybe a final question for all of the speakers is there an example of an issue that a data scientist could help on for your project?
I've got a list of ideas. So if I was talking about a digital twin, and there's lots of complicated questions there that need to be answered with data science methods, like estimating population densities, habitat use, and like Timo is saying, already go local. Well, we build these models local, but try to add for some models you can use them globally. But for some species, habitats are very, very specific. And then, of course, for every park, you can use 1 or 2 data scientists for quite a lot of time to build good models. But for a number of the more generic questions, there's work for a number of PhDs. And we have these. They were working on it, but only all of them are, of course, part-time. We are not being paid. We all have jobs, and so we can use all the help we can mobilize.
If I could just really quickly interject, there is an app that's being developed right now called Key Conservation that basically matches people with organizations, with biodiversity and sustainability NGOs, where people can volunteer money, time, services, and organizations can list specific things that they need. Like, we need an image recognition for this species in this habitat, or like, we need to organize this data into some sort of database. So it can be services that you provide as well. The launch is like in a couple of weeks. So I would check that out once it launches, because you can actually kind of pick bespoke topics that you can help with at different organizations.
Cool.
Perfect. Thank you. I think we're coming to the closing. So this was a very interesting talk. I would like to thank the speakers from Timo and Jan-Kees. Please feel free to connect later on through the organizations. You will also find the recording in the YouTube channel. And the idea is that you guys connect and share and work more and more together. I want to thank everybody, the audience as well. And we have our next session in a couple of weeks. So feel free to visit our page and then subscribe for the next session that we have.
Cool.
Thank you. And I wish you guys all good luck and a good evening.
Thanks for hosting.
Thank you, guys. Thank you.
Thank you.